I mean, it was almost kind of eerie, like being at a game experience and, hearing the stadium and hearing people like walking to the stadium and there being zero tailgating. That's like a Georgia Tech territory, right?
Welcome to My Gotta Podcast. I'm Jim Wood. In this episode, my co-host John Powell tells us about his experience at G-Day in Athens. We also give our thoughts on the game and talk about what is going on with Georgia basketball. As always, remember you can follow us on social media at My Gotta Podcast. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe, rate, 5 stars obviously, and review the show. If you leave us a review, you just might hear it on an upcoming episode. Now, let's join the conversation in progress. But yeah, so how was it going to Athens?
Oh, well, how was it going to Athens any time of year, much less on a game weekend? So, I mean, it was awesome. I hadn't been, well, I take that back. We went like several months ago when my kid, when Carter had a soccer game, and we were so close. We were over in Duluth previously, and we just decided to go up there and walking around and showing the kids everything. Had some pizza at Little Italy, so like that's like my go-to spot to stop anytime I go into town. So, we got into Athens probably around 12 o'clock, which was a little later than I wanted to get there. But anyhow, we walked around downtown, let her shop around a little bit. Had to find a mask actually, which is kind of crazy. Like I forgot my mask, so we actually picked up a mask at what is it, Game Day or whatever that's right there. I don't think it's called Game Day. I'm
like one of the apparel stores. There's like the red,
it's
like the red zone.
It's across from the Starbucks. I can't remember what it was called.
That's oh man, what is it? That was the place that I always went to.
The clubhouse?
Yeah, the clubhouse. Is that what it's called? Clubhouse. Yeah. That's where I always went.
I got a Georgia mask. I got a Georgia mask at the clubhouse because I forgot my mask. Which incidentally, speaking of the mask thing, which, I was expecting it to be a lot stricter than it was in the stadium. I only got asked one time to put on my mask when literally everybody else was like, we had a cop take our picture by the hedges.
Right.
And he didn't say anything to either of us. He was like, you guys got to move along, but I'll take your picture. And he didn't say anything about the mask.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's supposed to be like what, when you're walking around, like when you're in your seats, it doesn't matter. Right. That's what
you're supposed to be. It's supposed to be when you're walking around. You have to in the common areas or whatever.
Right.
But it was nice. It was so great to walk down the street there where the clubhouse is and see like all the people. They kind of cut off the street there, right there in front of the arch.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a little central square kind of thing going on there with the tables and whatnot, which was really cool. Like, I can't imagine what it's going to be like when they have a full audience there and full traffic with it still being cut off, because I can't imagine that it's interrupting a lot of like traffic flow situation. But it was nice. Obviously the weather was perfect. You couldn't have asked for a better day. I've been watching the weather all week long. Miserable in Minnesota was actually our ticket score on this one. Thank you very much, Tim, for that. But it ended up being a beautiful day. I was texting with Tim like that I was worried about what the weather was going to look like. But as we got there, it was supposed to rain, but it never rained, and it was a perfect day in Athens. We hit up all the spots, walked around North Campus, tried to go to some restaurants that were recommended, but everything was pretty packed out and booked out. So like the wait was like 2 hours at Last Resort was one of our backup plans. But we ended up eating at South Kitchen on the street in a tent that they had set up outside, which was really nice. So
the pictures looked excellent. I got the pictures.
Yeah, you got the pictures. I'm pretty sure Cade Weston was eating behind us, which was interesting.
Oh, that's funny.
There was apparently a lot of stars were in town from the pictures I saw from Ratty. But I didn't see any of those guys. I did run into a buddy of mine from Alpharetta who used to play for Georgia on the scout team for the offensive line. Shout out to Jake Hooten. Um, but yeah, it was awesome, man. Anytime you can go to Athens is great.
Yeah. It's actually been a while since I've gone to G Day for myself. I mean, when we lived in Georgia, we usually went, but then since we moved here, we've gone back. But I think the last one I went to was like I don't know, it's probably been like 6 or 7 years. Like I think like 14, something like that. Is probably the last G Day I went to. So um,
So interestingly, like, it's difficult. It has been difficult, although we're getting to the point now where like, well, maybe we can take the kids. But like taking the kids to a full blown game in Athens when they're like 4 years old kind of thing has been, we tried it and it's very difficult.
oh yeah.
It was even difficult with G Day before, but like G Day kind of become this like family tradition that we do.
Mm.
Because it's so laid back, the atmosphere is so chill. For example, like we didn't even sit in the seats that Tim's tickets were in. We actually sat in the lower level in the shade, which is also a super bonus.
Yeah.
So and nobody says anything. Nobody's checking tickets. Nobody cares. Like the lines weren't too long, obviously, because of the social distancing and all that stuff that they got going on right now. But like it's nice. It's like I kind of liken it to, even though I haven't been, but based on how people have described it to me, I kind of describe it like a master's practice round. So like you go and you get all the pomp and circumstance, you get all the pageantry that's involved with it, you get all the sights, all the sounds, and none of the stress.
Right.
And everybody's relaxed and having fun. Kirby's literally on the field. You can kind of walk down there and watch him do his thing.
Yep.
I didn't see Uga though. That was another kind of wrinkle that I feel like was missing from this go around, was that Uga wasn't there.
I wonder if he was allowed, because remember there were no live mascots allowed during like regular season.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's still in effect. Who knows?
If I feel like it's still in effect, but the one tradition that I know was shut down until had to have been fairly recently was that the last time we went to Athens, I noticed that the chapel bell was kind of sealed off. Like you couldn't ring the bell.
Mm. Yeah.
But for G Day, they had it fully functioning. So, and it was ringing all day long. It was awesome.
Yeah. We, before we started recording, we were talking about when Kim and I went with our friends in 2017 for the App State game. And so our friends we went with, the wife, Mandy, she went to App State. And so we invited them to come as App State fans. Although Brian didn't go to App State, but so Brian wanted to ring the bell, and he did it like before the game, and I was like, "Ha! You just jinxed App State because you rang the bell before the game. You're not supposed to do that." It was pretty funny. But
did he walk through the arch and instantly become sterile?
I think, I don't think that matters if you don't go.
I know.
I'm trying to remember the exactly how that works.
It definitely gives your team bad luck, though.
Right, for sure. Obviously. Oh, yeah. Let's focus on like what's real here. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's awesome. I'm glad you made it. Glad you had a good time. It definitely looked like the kind of Chamber of Commerce day. I mean, I know there's been some G days that I've been to where like you were saying, you got to be in the shade, which is nice, but at least it wasn't like, crazy, or was it? I don't know. I feel like, I guess at least here where I'm at, it wasn't crazy hot that day, but I'm sure, but it's always different in the stadium.
Yeah. I was about to say, like, it was really nice, but like, the clouds would come through and there'd be like brief periods of shade and we walk around would be fine. But then when the sun came out without a cloud in the sky, like it got pretty warm.
I've been to some of those GD games where it's like miserable, like it's so hot and like everyone's dying and like everyone's trying to get into the shaded area, and then like like it's all crowded and like you can't fit there.
The one thing that was missing, which I hope is something that they're able to bring back, is the tailgating. Like that was the one difference in going to a game day atmosphere. It was really weird to not see at least for a G Day game, right? So
Yeah.
G Day in the past, like you'd see like there'd be families and people with picnics, and there'd be the occasional tent that was set up for tailgating for G Day, but like there was nothing, there was nobody out there. Like we
Yeah.
were just walking around. I was like, I mean, it was almost kind of eerie, like being at a game experience and hearing the stadium and hearing people like walking to the stadium and there being zero tailgating. That's like a Georgia Tech territory, right?
Yeah. Well, I know. Okay, we'll go ahead and hit on this, right? Like we had talked about. This is my dad, right? Had asked a question last episode, like, would we have full stadiums in the fall? And I know we kind of hit on the opener in Charlotte, but so the governor of Charlotte today said that the plan is to like lift the restrictions on mass gatherings as of June 1st. So just one more step to get I'm assuming we're talking full stadium for Georgia Clemson now. I know there have been a lot of rumors floating, right, that wouldn't happen. So I think that's step one, right, to at least get everybody in the stadium, and then we'll see if the tailgating follows. I mean, I don't see the difference, I guess, but we'll see.
Selfishly, I was hoping that they were going to stick to their guns and
And like get it moved to Atlanta.
maybe the game gets moved to Atlanta. Yeah,
I
exactly.
know. I'm in the minority. You got like me and like Robert Wolf are like, it's got to stay in Charlotte.
I mean, I've got a conundrum with what I'm going to do. Like, I don't know if I'm like debating on what we're doing for my birthday, and it's like we can only choose one. It's like, do I want to go to Mexico or do I want to go to Charlotte and experience dog Twitter in Charlotte?
Well, there's the one hotel where like everyone's staying. So
the Westin,
the Westin. All right. Well, I guess we could talk a bit about the game itself. So I think you've experienced it twice now, right? Because you experienced it in person, and then I think you rewatched it.
Yeah. So we trying to move around and walk around. It was also distracting because there was a young-ish couple of couples that were in front of us, and one of the guys was like absolutely plastered. It was like, full on game day experience, guys. There's drunk people everywhere, and
Right.
this one guy was literally standing up on his own. His wife or fiance was like constantly having to rein him in, like Scott Cochran. She was pulling back on his belt. I mean, this guy was full blown yelling for Brock Vandegrift to start quarterback the whole time.
Oh man. So when I tweeted something about like no one calling for Brock Vandegrift to start after the way JT Daniels played, I guess I should have said except for that guy. But
I can tell you in the stadium, there was a lot of excitement when Brock got on the field. There was definitely a change in the energy when he took off. When he took off for that first run,
yeah.
I think like literally everybody in the stadium was just like, "Oh my gosh, it's a running quarterback!"
Well, I mean, okay. I mean, when he stepped on the field, I mean, it was impressive. I mean, he comes out there and again, it's just like the physical presence. Like he's big, he's got the hair.
The hair's flowing everywhere like Samson.
He's got an absolute cannon. I mean, like the first pass he threw, I mean, it jumped even on TV. I mean, it like jumped off the TV. It was like, whoa. And then that was his first play, and then the second play was where I think he tucked it and ran.
Yeah.
The fumbled snap kind of brought us back down to earth.
Oh my gosh, did it ever? And I remember seeing it, and I just remember thinking like, oh my gosh, no, you didn't just do that.
Yeah. But see, that's the thing.
It's hard to really gauge a lot of this stuff, and that's kind of that's going to be my theme across the board. Like for example, JT Daniels didn't have Darnell Washington to throw to because he was on the other team.
So I thought that was weird. I mean, I guess it makes sense. I mean, so you had first team offense was the red, and first team or second team was black, and so you had Fitzpatrick on red. But what stunk about that? Like, yes, we got like the highlight moment where Washington like absolutely ran over. I already forgot who he ran over.
Wasn't it Jackson, the guy that had the interception?
It was.
He made up for it later.
He did. But I did kind of wish, I don't know, maybe it was a bit of a confidence thing, right? Like, so you get him in there, you get him some confidence. But I guess I would have kind of liked to see what Washington would have done against the number one defense. Although I'm sure they see that in practice every day, so I guess it doesn't really matter. Like it's it's truly a spectacle for us.
Yeah.
I don't know how much the coaches even get out of it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Brock Vandegrift was one of the highlights for me as far as like things that I wanted to see. I wanted to see, going into it, I wanted to see who could potentially step into the Pickens role, and I think that we have a very clear answer.
Yeah.
At least from G Day, and we joked about this when we did the episode before, but like who was going to be the MVP breakout player of G Day that just disappears during the season. So I really hope that that's not the case with him, because he showed a lot of skills that seemed like that they would be very useful in the downfield passing threat.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. And so to clarify, we're talking about, and this is the question, right? Is it AD Mitchell or is it Adonai Mitchell? Or I'm not sure exactly how, because the broadcast kind of went back and forth.
So I listened to, and I don't know if you listened to this, but I listened to the part of, I didn't quite finish it. Sorry, Chuck, but the Bulldogs roundtable,
Mm-hmm.
and Chuck Dowdle referred to him as AD Mitchell,
Okay.
which you and I were messaging like the whole, like the game. Like I heard Jordan Rogers refer to him as AD Mitchell like constantly.
Yeah.
And like everybody else, I feel like has been referring to him to his formal name, which I assume is pronounced Adonai. Or
Yeah, that's where we're still holding off on the Georgia Dogs pronunciation guide with Scott Howard to tell us. Although I don't know, he may just be like AD Mitchell. Like maybe we won't get to hear it, but I am curious. Anyways,
yeah. So anyhow, I think that he obviously had a coming out party for the Georgia faithful.
yeah.
The other thing,
Well, I guess to stick with that though, with like the would there be like the G Day superstar, right? Who then doesn't do what they did in the regular season. I do. I guess I would like, to me, he doesn't fit that mold. Like the person that happens with is usually someone who's been there a couple of years and is on like the second team, and they're doing that against the second team defense. I mean, this guy
right?
is true freshman, just out of high school, didn't even play senior year of high school football, right? I think I heard that, like, because of moving and coronavirus and stuff.
Mm.
But so he's here, true freshman on the first team offense, playing against the first team defense. So to me, I feel like those are all things that lead me to believe that it's not just a random G Day blow up kind of thing. Like he looks like someone
Yeah.
we can count on.
He looked like I didn't know that about the high school football situation. I don't know if I did not hear that, but if that's the case, like there definitely were some spots early on, and it felt like he kind of was getting settled in, which is probably to be expected because it was a spring game.
Yeah.
Much like JT Daniels took a minute to get settled into himself as well.
Yep.
But he had some passes that he probably should have caught. He had some passes that I felt like he probably could have brought down. But then that catch at the end of the half was like beautiful. And I think that there were multiple former Georgia players that made comments about how eerily similar that play looked to a big famous play from the national championship game that we wish would never be played again. But
Yes.
I agree. It definitely, I had that thought as well when he caught that ball. I said, dang, dude, that looked a lot like the Bama blown coverage.
Yeah, it did. It was a little closer.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't quite as blown, but yes, it definitely looked similar.
It was a heck of a catch too.
It was an awesome catch, and I mean, he had. I know it's G Day, so I don't know how much you have to worry about this, but I mean, I think it was Sean, right, that was coming over from safety. He was right there. He got close. He definitely was in his face. So to be able to haul that in, it was definitely impressive.
Yeah, it was good. Are we going to stay on the wide receiver talk track here?
We can, sure.
I mean, it was nice to see Robertson It was nice to see Robertson get in. We had talked
Yeah.
about wanting to see him step up.
Yep.
Um, I wasn't. I mean, granted, I think that some of it was related to how the quarterbacks played, but like Arian Smith got missed a few times. There was a ball deep that was supposed to go to him that
Yeah.
I think was like either I think it was broken up or it was like I don't know. It was not a good. It was not a well thrown ball.
He was definitely overthrown, which I don't remember who it was, but I know I saw on Twitter during the game someone said, "Well, it looks like it is possible to overthrow Arian Smith."
Arian Smith,
I
yeah.
can't remember who said that, so apologies if whoever said that is listening. Um, but yeah, but he also had like a cast on his hand, so he wasn't like full go, Arian Smith.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I agree. I agree. It was good to see D Rob do that. We kind of had questions like, what will we see out of him in the fall? Um, so I'd love to see that continue.
Something else that I thought stuck out to me, and it was definitely in a scenario with I can't remember who it was that was defending him. I want to say it was one of the young guys, like Chris Smith, I think is who it was.
Mm.
Um, but there was a pass to Jackson where Jackson basically shrugged off the defender,
Yeah.
kind of slung him around, and he
Yep.
scored.
Yeah.
And I remember watching him catch that ball, and I remember thinking to myself, "Good Lord, did he bulk up? Because he looked bigger. He looked bigger in my head
Mm.
than what I recalled. So like, it seems like that he kind of bulked up a little bit in the off season and
Which
was
is funny
able
because
to basically,
they say the camera adds like 15 pounds, but you're saying he's bigger in
yeah,
person. So.
yeah. And he was, the way that he shrugged that defender off, like he planted his feet and basically didn't move. Like it was almost like it was just non-existent. So
Yeah.
that was impressive. That was an impressive catch to me because of just you know how small I thought he was. But
Yeah. Yeah. No, he looked good, man. He kind of, I felt like, picked up where he left off. Definitely someone we can count on. And we didn't have, you know, this is all still with no Burton, no
mm-hmm.
Blaylock, right? So I don't know. I guess I would say like receiver was definitely something I wanted to watch because we're all thinking, can we replace Pickens, or at least hold the fort down? I definitely feel better. It made me feel better personally.
Someone that I kind of in that same vein of like, man, it would have been nice to see Daniels throw into him. Was there was a lot of pregame buzz about Brock Bowers, and
Yeah.
he definitely was targeted many times in the G Day game, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
He looked good,
but there
man.
was a couple. Yeah, I agree. Like he looks like he's going to be a problem. Jordan Rodgers mentioned it on the replay, or I mean on the broadcast that he was going to be a threat downfield. So like they sent that kid up the middle into a seam route that literally could have absolutely gotten blown up had it actually been on the money. But
Mm.
like he seems like he gets into these open areas and open spots, and that if we can catch him, and I hesitate to say this, but he reminded me a lot of Isaac Nada.
Dude, I was literally waiting for you to pause so I could say that. That's exactly what I
Shocking.
said. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Shocking. We agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I was sitting there during the game, like, man, this guy reminds me of Nada. So that's hilarious. Yeah. So, dude, yeah, totally agree. I mean, yeah, I felt good about the offensive weapons, and I would say too. I was reading something I noticed, but then just I read like Seth Emerson's like second watch or whatever today, and he was talking about a lot about, or I think JT Daniels had talked a lot about like post game, just around all the checkdowns, to the backs. And because there were not many rushing attempts. It was I mean, again, it's an exhibition. We JT Daniels still needs work. We're trying to evaluate who's going to be second string quarterback, etc. A lot of airing it out. But there were a lot of passes to the backs, and I thought they all looked really good. I mean, obviously, we expect Cook to look really good, and he did not disappoint there. the wheel route. I guess that's kind of like good and bad. Awesome to see the offense pull off the wheel route, and then defense can't stop the wheel route. But I thought like Zamir White looked really good catching the ball out of the backfield. And then also Kendall Milton. I feel like we were kind of critical of Milton last year, right? Like he had
catching the ball.
Yeah, he had a couple of drops, and he looked really good out of the backfield. So that was also encouraging. And because I'm not worried about any of those guys running the ball.
Yeah, I think that they were probably trying to avoid any kind of ACL type injuries and things like that in the spring game. But
yep.
I don't know. I will disagree with you slightly. Like it may be that Zamir got more opportunities because he's clearly the number one running back.
Mm-hmm.
At least going into the fall, right? So things can obviously change between now and then. But I thought that he could have. I thought that he had some opportunities to catch the ball and didn't. I don't know. There were some drops I thought that he had that he should have reined in. That was kind of.
I've only watched it. I've only watched it once, so maybe I missed something. But I do know like Zeus did have. He had 6 catches on the game or in the game. So
right,
it threw him a lot.
Well, he should have had more.
So all right, so we talked about the quarterbacks, but in our spring practice episode, we did have a listener question from Yankee Dog 70. Greg Armona had asked us like who's going to be the backup quarterback. I think we kind of talked about what we thought at the time, but said we would revisit after G-Day. I mean, Beck obviously was running the second team. We talked about the physical ability that kind of jumped off the field or off the screen with Vandegrift. I think we kind of all know what Stetson Bennett is. He was kind of par for the course, I thought, for what he did in the game. I don't know. What do you think? Did you see enough out of Beck to say he's number 2 or?
Yeah, I did. Okay. I think that he's very clearly the number 2. Now, I say that with a caveat, though. So my perspective on that is that I believe that he is the number 2 quarterback because they recognize that he should be the number 2 quarterback. Mm-hmm. There were definitely some areas for improvement for him that he needs to work on. Some of his timing, some of the seam routes. Like I think Jordan Rodgers mentioned this on the broadcast about some of the timing on some of these back shoulder throws, some of the timing with the seam routes that Monken was trying to run with the tight ends that they needed to be hit, 10 to 15 yards downfield as opposed to where he was trying to hit him. So I think that there's definitely some areas for opportunity. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, Beck was actually more accurate from a completion percentage than Daniels was. And I think that might be partially due to the fact that, Daniels was airing it out quite a good bit more, I felt like, than Beck was.
Yeah.
But from where I sit, if you had to put a roster out and say this is the depth chart that we think of today, like Carson Beck would be the clear number 2 quarterback. Now, I say that because if, let's say, in the fall, as it stands right now, and obviously we don't have the luxury of having the fall, but if the season started tomorrow and JT, knock on wood, knock on your head.
I hit my head.
If something happened to JT Daniels in week 1 or week 2, I have a feeling that Stetson most likely would be more trusted to not lose the games, although your mileage may vary on how you feel about that. That's kind of my suspicion.
Yeah.
Because he knows how to run the offense, and they actually mentioned it on the broadcast. Like they mentioned, like this kid, he's been here, he's been around the block, and he knows how to run the offense, all that kind of stuff. So like, anyway, that's just kind of my take on it. Is that I think that they recognize that Carson Beck should be the number 2, and God love him. Like the kid was under immense pressure, and I didn't even think about this that much until it was called out on the broadcast. Mm-hmm. But Beck, as a true freshman, came to Georgia and had to deal with the adjustments of being a freshman, having to deal with a new coach, new school, all that kind of stuff. And then they didn't get a spring.
Yeah.
They didn't get any reps. Like the reps were hard to come by. And then all of a sudden, like basically he kind of just like, it was like a throwaway year of sorts for Carson Beck. And I hadn't really thought about that too deeply until I was watching the broadcast and they were talking about it. I was like, yeah, it's true. And like, I mean, these kids that came to Georgia as true freshmen, like that's crazy. Like, and as a quarterback and at a position that's like very, very reliant on reps, trust, timing with right wide receivers, and obviously the coach contact. So like if you throw all that out the window, then the opportunity for development is very limited.
Yeah.
But you saw that he has the skills.
Yeah, yeah, and especially when in this day and age, I mean, if you're a quarterback, you're graduating high school early, you're getting that spring practice, right? And he didn't get that. No, I totally agree. I mean, yeah, I would say, if you're just looking at the depth chart, I would say Beck is number 2 as well. And I got to give credit to our guy Josh Hancher, Dog Stats, because we had an exchange after our last episode on Twitter about that. I think Graham, Coffee, and I were kind of saying Stetson, and Josh kept saying like, no, Beck's 2, and I was kind of like, I don't know, Josh, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. Like we'll see at G-Day. So I think he's right. But I side with you though that like, if we were forced into a multi-game thing or whatever, right? As far as depth charts go, I think Beck would be number 2. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either if if we had to make a change, that it would be Stetson just because they trust him. But then, something I did tweet, I think towards the end of the game was like, when's the last time that you're sitting at G-Day and you see the stud freshman with a rocket arm and legs like that, like Vandegrift displayed. And here we are, like, we didn't even just mention him just now. And I'm saying that as like a good thing. Like, think about the state that our quarterback room is in right now, as opposed to last fall when when Newman opts out and everything went haywire. If Fromm leaves, we get Newman, and then thankfully Kirby Smart and staff thought to sign JT Daniels also. I mean, imagine if they didn't do that. So anyways, it's a pretty cool situation to be in. It feels good to have a returning starter and not have to worry about all this stuff. And not have to be like, ooh, that freshman looks pretty good.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's a good feeling.
So there was a famous stat that everybody likes to compare Kirby to Mark Richt. So I'm going to make a comparison to Mark Richt.
Sure.
I hate that comparison, by the way, but it's a dumb comparison nonetheless.
Yes.
So there's a famous stat that Richt that I always like to point to when people were asking me about what I thought about the season. So when Richt had a returning starting quarterback, he never won less than 10 games. So if you've got Kirby's got a returning starting quarterback, I think 10 games is very much within the realm of possibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
If not more.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Okay, so something else I had jotted down was just offensive line, and I know we had kind of texted about that. Like, it didn't give us the warm and fuzzies. There was a lot of pressure on the quarterbacks, and it was interesting. Again, like picking up from the broadcast, like they were kind of saying, like, man, like the Georgia defense is really bringing it. Like they're mixing up a little bit, and getting some pressure on the quarterback. And when I talked to Kirby, he was like, well, they're not doing anything fancy. like we're not really blitzing or anything. So that didn't make me feel great. I did, one of the things I had wondered was, would we see the same starting 5 from the Peach Bowl as the starting 5 in G-Day? And we didn't I grabbed like the stats sheet on Georgia Dogs, and there's only one difference. And that was Ratledge at guard instead of Salyer. But everything else, Truss and McClendon at tackle, Schaefer at the other guard spot, and then Erickson at center. But Salyer did play, and he played on the red team. So they had I would say the top 6 linemen all on the red team, kind of all considered as starters. So that was interesting. Um, so I don't know. I don't know what to think about that. I mean, obviously, the offensive line play of the game was when Mims got the throwback screen. Like that was pretty amazing. I don't
I
know.
was actually surprised. I was actually surprised that they busted that play out. I'm hoping that they break something out like that that's a wrinkle for something a little bit more than what they ended up with there.
I was kind of
And
disappointed by that too, because like I was like, oh man, I would like to see that like in a game and like work.
exactly. Although I'm glad that we got it out of our system because maybe they're like, oh, maybe that's not such a good one, guys.
That's true. That's true.
Because it got sniffed out pretty quickly. Like
Yeah.
Mims, and maybe Mims didn't sell it because he's a true freshman. Like we threw it to a true freshman. Like he kind of was like maybe half committed to his block, and then like
Right.
literally just like he was just like had his hands up, and then just he like
Right. Right.
I'm out here, and
Right.
then the defensive end was like or outside linebacker, but I don't want to get into I don't want to get into an argument with anybody. But he very quickly was like, oh, yep, that's a pass. I need to go block. I need to go cover for this guy out here. That was weird. I
Yeah.
was actually impressed with that. The defense overall, I was very impressed with.
Oh yeah.
So the
Absolutely.
thing that concerns me the most about this game was the inconsistency of the offensive line. It seemed like
Yep.
it would continue, and I know it was a spring game, blah blah blah. But like, there were multiple times in that game where had they been playing full speed, that JT Daniels would have been like picked up off of his rear end in a heap.
Yeah.
Most likely would have had some sort of like pressure on the ball. You know, had he like they like reach rather than just reaching out and like touching him, like actually
Yeah.
reached out and like clawed at him.
Right.
You know, there were some opportunities for the defense to make some plays where not only were they have been sacked, but they would have physically got to JT Daniels. Like those are not good scenarios, obviously, for a quarterback that is, still by and large, he's obviously probably 100%, obviously, but when you're coming back from a knee injury, you don't want to see your quarterback going down in a heap.
Yeah.
And I felt like that there were multiple scenarios that would have ended in that had we been playing in Auburn or in Alabama or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it was even in the Cincinnati, like in the Peach Bowl, right? Like that was the thing, because I mean, that's kind of how the Peach Bowl went, honestly, right? I mean, Daniels did not have a lot of time in that game, and our defense did that to him again. Again, it's G Day, and I guess the defense kind of knew they were going to throw all the time. There was no balance from that angle.
Right. Now, on the flip side of that, like there were some of those plays that got whistled dead because the defense was able to get a hand on the quarterback, which there were a couple of times where they got a hand on the quarterback where like, maybe he does break away from that in an actual in-game scenario. And he was stepping up into the pocket and he was getting ready to make some throws. And in a couple of cases he did get some throws away, but like, I don't know, there were some situations that made you pause for concern for what might be coming down the road. However, like I said, Washington was not on his side of the field.
Yep.
Which he's going to be a big body on the offensive line as well for some of the blocking. We didn't run a whole lot, so like if the defense is able to pin their ears back and come at you every down because they pretty much know you're not going to run the ball. Anyway,
which as much as everyone wants us to be like all like sexy and air raid or whatever, I mean, we're still going to run the ball. I fully expect that. Right. I mean, we've got too many good tailbacks not to. So yeah, but and again, but that you've got to at least do it for what you were just talking about, right? So that the defense doesn't always just de facto know it's coming, right, and be able to just pin their ears back and rush the passer like that.
Yep.
So sticking with the defense, as good as the defense looked, like the thing we were worried about was cornerback, right? So it felt good at safety, but what about corner? So it was interesting because I think we were kind of thinking that Keely Ringo would be one of the starters, and he was on the black team. So we had Kimber and Speed on the red team as the starters.
Mm-hmm.
So that was interesting. I mean, I thought, well, and so and then you had Ringo and then Lovesey Carroll as the corners on the black team. And I mean,
Which Levacy was the guy that fell
he
during
was,
Washington's big game.
he was. Well, so he fell there, and then on the long touchdown pass to D Rob,
T
I can't.
Rob.
It was either Kimber or Speed, and I can't remember who it was. But whoever it was, like they got kind of tangled up, and the DB fell. So I mean, good for D Rob to be able to run through it, right? But I mean, I felt like overall they did pretty well. I mean, again, in a spring game where I mean we were really just throwing the ball pretty much nonstop, and but neither team got to 30 points. So I feel like the secondary had to have been doing somewhat something, right?
Well, we probably would have gotten to 30 points had Jake Camarda been able to kick a field goal.
Well, yeah, right. It's okay. It's a river. Remember, it's okay. He's the punter. He's the
He's
punter.
the punter.
It's
He's the
okay.
punter.
It's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, good point. Good point. Fair point. But but yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I felt like they were serviceable. I'll
Yeah.
throw it out.
So
I mean, yeah. What do you think?
yeah. I mean, I was just about to say, like, I mean, my 2 cents on the defensive backs was that it concerns me that Nolan Smith was caught out like that in coverage with Cook. So I
Yeah.
imagine that there are probably a number of offensive minds in the SEC that had 4 losses that are probably still watching that.
Yes.
Anyway, but the defensive backs overall, I thought that they did, like you said, I think they did okay. Again, it's hard to really tell because you don't really have the full deck of cards on the defensive side to really like tell what's going on.
Yeah.
Tyke Smith, wait, is it Tyke?
Yeah.
Smith, right?
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. He wasn't out there, which I
Yep.
think is, as we all expect and believe, is going to be an impact in the passing game for us. So
Yeah.
that's also going to be a bit of a wild card for us as the fall rolls around. Is what can he actually bring to the table?
Well,
I
and I'll
was
say
actually
too, like last time I was saying like how I was kind of calling myself out, like because I was like, oh, I was assuming that Smith was a corner, and like he played safety, but and I was saying like, oh, I kind of hoped he could have been like Maurice Smith, but with the way we run our defense, I mean, really, I think Maurice Smith actually mainly played like that, like the star position, right? Which I think is kind of where we're assuming Tyke Smith will slide right into. So it actually may be a perfect fit for our defense. So just kind of
yeah.
bad on me there. So I don't know. That got me much more like re-excited and energized for that.
So Kirby, being from the defensive side, I think recognizes that he needs to have the best players available to him on the field, and if Tyke, if he fits that bill, they'll figure out a way to get him on the field. So I'm not really too concerned about where he exactly lines up at. If it's at safety, if it's at the star, if it's at cornerback, wherever he ends up lining up, I imagine that these guys are pretty versatile for the most part, unless you're just like straight up just going to be a safety. You know what I mean? And it seems like
Right.
he's got some versatility to in that regard. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm also of the opinion that when the new guy comes to town and starts kicking down doors on the defense, like, and guys start to recognize that their jobs may be on the line, it elevates the competition across the board.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
So
For sure.
good players make other players play better. And maybe he's the type of guy that will come in and be a veteran and start barking orders at people left and right and like getting these young guys in line. So
Yeah.
he'll come with a lot of experience. And I think that he will bring a different element to the defensive secondary for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, overall, the defense looked pretty solid and, like you said, serviceable. I mean, if we're giving up 20-ish points to an elite offense, then I'd say that that's probably a win in today's defensive game. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that pans out for the season.
Yeah. No, agreed. Yeah. And I mean, like, I feel like that, you know, I saw what I expected to out of the defensive line and the, and the linebackers. So, and we didn't even have wait, so who? Yeah, because on we had like Quay Walker, starting um, at inside linebacker because we were missing. What? Why am I blanking? So we'll have what? Quay Walker, Tyndall, N'Kobe Dean. N'Kobe Dean didn't play. He had an injury. So we didn't even have him on the field either. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm not worried about the. I was gonna say the front seven, but I guess with the way we play, maybe it's the front six. But at any rate, so so another thing I had jotted down, something that we had talked about before, or the other things that I had said I was looking for in the game. One of them was JT Daniels' mechanics. So when you rewatched, did you see what I was talking about? Where Jordan Rogers was talking about like the way that JT rotates his hips on those deep balls, and that's like intentional. And it was saying something along the lines that it had to do with initially like with coming off the injury and not being able to push off his back foot, like step into throws, and so he does this kind of hip release thing. So I don't know if that's the kick, like the karate kick, that we've seen, if that's exactly what he's talking about. But because I was kind of hoping to not see that, and we still did. But his deep ball, he looked even better than last year. I would say that at least.
So there were a couple of times where he made some throws that I was like, that worries me a little bit. Like I said, he had the lower completion percentage. I would like to see him completing 70% of his passes. If he's completing 70% of our passes, I like our chances. Yeah. But there were several that he let get out of his way. There were several that probably should have been intercepted. The thing that I did, I saw what he was talking about, but it doesn't make sense to me. So like,
yeah, I agree.
I obviously I did not play football at a high level by any stretch of the imagination. So I feel somewhat ignorant to some of this. However, having played other sports where legs are very much involved with, throwing or batting.
Yeah.
Anytime you lift your feet up off the ground, you are taking away control of where you're going to be putting the ball. So to me, like when the way that he was explaining it was that he kind of does this little jump thing where both feet come off the ground to help him throw the ball deeper, more accurately, or something like that.
Yep.
And that just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever, because you don't see pitchers, or you don't see anybody like jumping off the ground. If anything, they've got one foot planted and the other foot is planted going forward. Baseball, very similar. Like, I mean, infielder, they always tell you like your throw is going to go wherever your foot goes, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So like, if you don't have control of that foot, then how do you know where it's going to go? So like, I don't know, maybe someone that's smarter with football can advise on why that was a good thing. But like, obviously Jordan was a quarterback, so like, and his brother is a very accomplished quarterback, so he probably knows and have heard something along those lines that make it seem. But I gotta tell you,
they don't talk to each other anymore though, so I don't know.
Yeah, but I've never seen Matt Stafford or Matt Ryan like do a little jump pivot and throw the ball.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I don't know. So I guess I was kind of hoping to see better mechanics. I would say overall I did. Like he definitely had some nice deep balls that he threw, but yeah, I don't so much like it when he kicks like that. But okay, so we'll see.
God bless him. He gave us the awesome new GIF with his looking to the sideline, and he gave like the stink face to someone on the sideline.
Yes.
Which maybe that means that he's like, wait, what are we doing? Why are we doing that? And then he was like, right. Okay, I understand. Like, is he still learning the playbook, or was he just learning the playbook for G-Day?
I felt like he was really good. Like his post game interview too, like was good. I don't know. I like that. He seems very polished. So I like that.
So my only other feedback on JT Daniels with the G-Day game situation was mentioned heavily on the broadcast at multiple points, might I add. Okay. They were basically gushing over how polished, and you use that word, how polished he was as a quarterback and as a professional. I think that Jordan Rodgers mentioned multiple times that they've interviewed quarterbacks, all over the place in multiple scenarios, and they had never come across a kid that was so detailed in his game preparation that that they were just blown away with. And that to me spoke volumes, because these guys were around Jake Fromm.
Yeah.
These guys have been around Tua. They've been around Matt Jones. They've been around Mac Jones. They've been around Joe Burrow. They've been around what's the Trask. They've been around Trask. Like, they've been around these quarterbacks from the SEC that were really highly regarded. So, like, I don't know. I always thought that Aaron Murray had some of that. Aaron Murray didn't necessarily have the physical tools to be an elite quarterback at a high level beyond the college experience. However, JT obviously is, by all intents and purposes, looks like he's going to be at least a second round draft pick, in my opinion. But most likely he's going to be a first round draft pick.
I mean, he's being talked about. Yeah, he's being talked about as like the leader. I don't know, like the number one quarterback returning in the SEC. I've seen that thrown around a lot.
So, like, he's got all the physical tools, and he's got that same preparation that Aaron Murray used to have. That's something that I always heard about Aaron Murray, was how disciplined he was in his game prep and his film and all that kind of stuff. So, like, if that translates into the fall, and it sounds like that, he's been that way for a long time, even going back to high school. I think they even mentioned and told a story about how he got up and did something when he was in middle school with the varsity quarterback and explained to them some sort of passing concept or something like that on the whiteboard, and like everybody was blown away at a young age. Like, he's very clearly was built for this. Maybe he'll be a quarterback's coach in the future, but anyway, I thought that he was. They gushed over his game prep, and you can kind of hear him. I mean, I don't necessarily think that he's going to be on ESPN by any means, but he sounds like he knows what he's talking about and can at least convey that in an interview.
Yeah, definitely. And so did Monty Rice on the sideline.
That was funny to see Monty, because that interception happened right in the middle of them talking to him.
Yeah, he was great. I thought he did a really good job. I don't know. That's always cool to see those guys out there.
But speaking of Monty Rice, his talk, this is something we also need to verify. He called Lewis Seen Carl Lewis.
Right.
Did you?
Yeah.
I don't know if you picked up on that. Like, I don't know if that's like a nickname that he has for the insiders on the football team, but I've never heard that.
Yeah. I had that. No, I didn't. You texted me that. I got it. Yeah, I missed that. I don't know. Who knows? We'll see.
We need to see if there's a story behind that.
Right. We need the inside information. Well, I guess the overall, like, the number one thing I was looking for in G-Day was no injuries, and that was accomplished. So we didn't see any injuries or anything. I don't remember anyone really going down. So certainly nothing major. So that's always good to see in a bowl game. In a spring practice scrimmage.
Spring scrimmage. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Did you have anything else on the game? I had a couple other things to hit on other than G-Day.
Not that I can think of. No, I don't really have anything of substance.
Okay.
You could probably nitpick here and there, but like, I think we kind of talked ad nauseum about how it's difficult to really look at this with any like true lens of analysis, because it was a spring game and the teams were so like chopped up. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, it is what it is, right? I didn't see anything that like made me freak out. I did, like we talked about. I would say if anything's going to concern you for what we saw in the game, it was the offensive line. But again, it's a spring game. I don't really know a whole lot to make out of it. So we'll wait and see in the fall. So I did want to talk a little bit about. It's actually you mentioned like the main thing I wanted to say about this, but the Barrett Sallee article that like blew up on Twitter a couple of days ago, where, and I won't say like the whole article or anything, but it was a list. So he gave the 7 college football coaches under the most pressure entering the 2021 season. And he actually responded to you, right? Because you responded to his tweet and you were like, whoa, there's a hot take. Kirby on the hot seat. Like, what are you talking about? And then he got into this, well, I didn't say hot seat. And then it kind of took off from there. And we
Yeah.
believe that the article was then updated to specify
Yeah.
that he's not talking about hot seat. There's different kinds of pressure, etc. But the kicker to me is the last sentence of his Kirby Smart section. So he goes through several things of like there's optimism because of this and this, all the things that we've talked about, right? You got JT back, you got the stable running backs, the defense, etc. But so he says that Georgia needs to make the college football playoff this year, otherwise Smart will start looking plenty like former Georgia coach Mark Richt. And you mentioned that earlier, like where this Mark Richt comparison is so silly, and especially like to this point, right? I mean, like to this point in Mark Richt's career, like anyone would want to have that start, right? Never been a head coach before. He comes into Georgia and he wins 2 SEC championships in his first 5 seasons as a head coach. I mean, you would love to be compared to that, right? Like Mark Richt didn't get fired over his first 5 years, his first 6 years, his first 7 years, right? I mean, the first 7 years, at the end of year 7, that's the team that finished, number 2 that beat Hawaii in the Sugar Bowl. I mean, that wasn't the problem. The problem was at the end, when the problem was 15, frankly, right? I mean, the recruiting had fell off, et cetera. I mean, again, I just think it's I don't know, it's lazy. I'm so sick of it. Like I don't know if it'll ever stop. I mean, I think the only way to get it to stop is for Kirby and Georgia to break through the ceiling and win the national championship. That's probably the only way to ever get it to really stop. But it's so dumb.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so the thing that irritated me about it was that he used Kirby Smart as the main graphic in his article, and he had him listed first. And I just felt like, I think my initial response was, my off the cuff, like not reading the article when I first
Right.
responded to it, was looking at the headline and looking at the image that was associated with it. And I said, the guy featured or the guy pictured is not one of them, because there's not like the way that I thought that he was trying to articulate it was there was a hot seat take.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's semantics. Okay, pressure. Well, okay, it's the SEC, Joker. Like literally every coach has pressure in the SEC. I would argue that Dan Mullen has more pressure than Kirby Smart does this year, because if he, with an all-time offense for Florida and a record-setting offense for Florida, Heisman finalist, by every stretch of the imagination, they're going to have 3-4 guys go in the first round. And he still pulled out 4 losses on the season with that type of team. If he comes back and has another 4-loss season, to me, I feel like that immediately puts him on the bubble of whether or not he's going to be around next season.
Yeah.
So in my mind, the guy that has the most pressure on him is Dan Mullen in the SEC. Kirby Smart would be somewhere, somewhere in the middle, I would say. I mean, there's pressure at Tennessee, there's pressure at Auburn. They've gone through multiple coaching changes over the last, decade or so.
Yeah.
I would say that they have a lot of pressure on them. I would say that Jimbo Fisher has a lot of pressure at Texas A&M for him to start to produce.
Yeah. Definitely.
Kirby Smart has won an SEC championship. He's gotten to within a play of the national championship. Like, do we really believe that he's going to be, barring something like something untraditionally epic failure this season? Like, I don't think he's going to approach anywhere near like job hot seat type situation this season.
Yeah, that's where I don't quite understand what he's saying with pressure. I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
our fan base is gonna apply pressure no matter who sits in that seat.
Yeah.
And then I think that he kind of went further along and kind of went into like some of his rationale, which in my opinion wasn't exactly very apparent in the article. Where like, okay, well, I think him and Graham had a back and forth, and basically he was just kind of like, oh yeah, no, I don't think that you can get any better, but like we're still going to put him number one on the list of high pressure coaches in the SEC. Like, no,
Right.
get out of here.
Yeah.
No, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, it was weird. It caused a bit of a Twitter storm. But like I texted you, Beardsley was the one who told us that Jamie Newman left because he saw Dwan Mathis at practice. So anyway,
I mean, someone's got to pay for those advertising clicks.
That's right. And he went to Auburn.
And apparently it was
he
us.
went to Auburn. Yeah. Well, true.
Yeah.
True. So I don't want to dive into a whole lot about this, but you when we were getting started the last time we recorded, I had asked you like ahead of time, like, do we want to talk about basketball? And like that's basically all we said. We talked about was like right then. I don't think we ever got back to it, but you made your like, will the last person who leaves turn the light out? And like, oh my gosh, like it's gotten a lot worse since we talked. I mean, like the whole nucleus of the team is gone. I'm like, I have never seen anything like this, and I get the whole like, yeah, it's it's different. We had a pandemic, and there's a transfer portal, but I don't see anyone else like. Do other teams have maybe more players going to the portal than Georgia? I think the answer to that is yes. Like that's a statistic like you can't deny. But are other teams losing like their best players, like their singular best player? I mean, Xavier Wheeler is the best player on the team. Toumani Camara, I would say, was the second best player on the team. And then you could probably have an argument as far as guys coming back. You could probably argue between KD Johnson and Ty Fagan, and Ty Fagan is in the transfer portal, or they're all gone. Then you've got Camara is going to Dayton, Fagan's going to Ole Miss, and Wheeler has simultaneously entered in the draft, which I don't see that happening. I would be shocked if he stays in the draft. And he left the door open to come back to Georgia, but it seems weird. Something weird is going on, and like we've got some transfers coming in. Including Sharif Abdur-Rahim's kid, which that's cool. But I mean, they're not as good as the guys that left. I don't know. I don't know what to say. Like, it's strange, I guess is my best way to describe it.
Jim.
Yes.
I say this with love. I say this with love.
Yes.
Recognizing that I myself am not nearly as invested in Georgia basketball as you and many others are. I'm kind of glad I'm not. No. Because I'm like the outside. I'm like the outside looking in.
No, like it's way more relaxing to not.
but at the same time, like I'm not oblivious. Like I've watched some games this season. Like I think at the beginning of the season you were like really hyped up about it at the beginning. I was like, are we really going to do this? we went on that run at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, we're like undefeated. It was like are we like good? Like what's going on here?
You had mentioned to me like this is what they do. They go undefeated, and then there's either a crash at the end, or they like go on a blip and then just like barely get to 500 or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway,
it's either a fast start and then collapse, or a slow start and then get really good at the end, but it's too late. Like that's generally.
So there's an age old adage where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah.
And to me, there's just a flaming, smoking crater of a dumpster fire going on with the basketball program. I am shocked that people are like voluntarily like transferring to our school. So like whoever is doing that sales job deserves credit, I guess, because like they're convincing someone to come into an absolute like poop storm. So like, I don't know, man. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I get the arguments, but I think actually on the Bulldog Roundtable, they had he had Scott Howard on for like the first part of it when the Wheeler stuff went down. I guess that they were planning to talk about G-Day, but ended up talking about basketball for a long time. And I think it was Scott Howard that mentioned that the whole scenario that's going on right now in college football or college basketball was what caused Roy Williams to bow out. He's like, I can't, this is not manageable moving forward. I can't manage this moving forward. And so he just like pieced him out.
Yeah, I read that too, and so I know I sent you today that Mark Bradley article, and I mean Mark Bradley was like the way he put it in there was like he's like Roy Williams quit because of this. Yeah, I hadn't, and I mean, shoot, I live in Charlotte, I live in North Carolina, and I was oblivious to that. Total like dog living in North Carolina, not paying attention to the ACC basketball as much. I mean, I knew Roy Williams was gone, but I hadn't heard that side of it, right? That's why. But yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I think Scott Howard said in the interview with Chuck was like, I don't know what's going on with in his Scott Howard voice, like, I don't know what's going on with this transfer portal. Do I need to enter the transfer portal? Like, what's going on with this?
Right. Well, I mean, I know there's like 1,400 guys in the transfer portal, so like, yes, that is weird. But I think anyone would be hard pressed to point out another school that had what happened to us happen. Like, yes, other schools may have more guys numbers leaving, but not the number one, number two, and then argue number 3 or 4 returning starter. All that I have the nucleus all leave, and then to not be replacing them with better players coming in from the portal. I don't know. It's mind boggling. So I don't know. Hopefully Crean knows what he's doing, and because his buyout I think prevents Josh Brooks from making any kind of change. I don't see any change happening this offseason. So I don't know. Hopefully, I always want him to win. Like I much prefer he just figures it out and we're also next year, but we'll see.
So here's where I sit on that whole deal. So like number one, okay, if we as an athletic association have decided that we're going to retain Tom Crean, indefinitely or like for the time being, someone should come out and say, hey, this is our coach. He's going to be our coach. We have a contract with our coach for the next XYZ years or something along those lines that at least like publicly says that we're not making any changes in basketball for the next XYZ years.
Yeah.
Now, they can always come out and say those kinds of things. It's almost like the soccer equivalent to some soccer player that's a super stud, young athlete. Like there's a guy at Dortmund right now. His name is Holland. Who is the hottest commodity in soccer right now. And he's basically come out and said, I've got a contract with Dortmund. I'm here through the end of my contract. That's all I can say right now. Mm-hmm. Like, obviously that like publicly, at least he's addressed it. He's, committed to a certain extent, but also like everybody can kind of see the writing on the wall that like, okay, well, there's also the opportunity that they won't renew the contract kind of thing, or he won't sign a new contract. So like, obviously like there's a number of ways that you can communicate that out. And there's just been this just deafening silence from the athletic administration about this situation, because it's like, you've got all these fans that have been just blowing up Twitter and blowing up social media and talk radio, like all that kind of stuff has just been going on in the background. And I hate to say it, like, I feel like it's kind of a miss from an athletic AD standpoint to like at least come out and like address the situation. Like, hey, Crean is our coach, or at least set up some sort of setup interview where like, hey, we want to get on and talk about this. Can you ask us these questions on camera and we'll answer them?
Right. So I didn't read it. I know Josh Brooks did say something to Chip Towers recently. But it was.
But he said it. But he said it to the beat writer. He said it to the local beat writer. This used to be like ESPN Sports Center, like.
Yeah. He said, I'll just read the quote. So he said, "I see the progress we've made in a challenging year. We've taken steps in each year and progressed. And I've got confidence in the results we're seeing." So, I mean, again, that was before. I know it was before Xavier Wheeler left. I'm not sure about Kamara or not. I just don't remember the timing. But I don't know. The thing that bothers me on that too is like, you can look at, and I've seen, all the defenses that are being made for Crean. Like, one of them is the record's gotten better every year. And that is true, but that's ignoring the enormous dip that we experienced from the last year of Mark Fox to the first year of Tom Crean. And the whole thing there was, it's like Mark Fox was good, right? Like Georgia basketball was, you could say good. I mean, obviously not great. Maybe decent was a better word, I guess, right? Like they had winning seasons. They went to
He
the
was like the
NCAA.
Chan Gailey. He was like the Chan
Yeah,
Gailey of Georgia basketball.
right. Like you'd go to the NCAA
He was
tournament
good.
occasionally. You'd be somewhere between an 8 to 10 seed and ballot in the first round. But they had winning records, right? Like, and then in the first year of Crean, everything just fell off the rails. They were horrible. And then yes, they've improved every season since then, but that ignores that first year. I mean, like just huge dip in year one. So I don't know. Like I said, I hope he figures it out. It's frustrating.
The thing that doesn't give me very much confidence is the fact that he is an old coach. He was unemployed. He was unawares. To the goings on of the youth of today, in my opinion, and is really getting caught up to speed on all this stuff. And then throw in the wrinkle of like the one-time transfer waiver and all this like transfer portal stuff. Like, I feel like that he's kind of in this spot where he like, yeah, I could quit or I could keep cashing these retirement checks.
Right. Oh well. Well, now we got to talk about something positive before we end. Now, I took us down this like negativity thing. So how about this? The equestrian team, they just won the national championship. So congrats to the equestrian team. And then baseball had a walk-off win against Clemson last night. That was pretty awesome.
Yep. That's pretty cool.
They're playing pretty well. So we can throw that out there. There's some positive things, and then obviously future is bright for football.
There's another positive that you didn't mention that actually caught my eye with I believe it was Chip Towers. Since we were talking about Chip Towers, but the softball team delivered Oklahoma's first loss of the season.
Correct.
And Jaden Fields, who I believe you might remember that name.
Yes.
Jaden Fields is on that squad, and Chip Towers had an article that specifically mentioned Justin Fields' sister, Jaden Fields, and I was and misspelled her name.
Right.
That was a little bit of a, come on, man.
Yeah, I saw that.
You're killing me here.
And I saw our guy John Tweet Sports was saying that, like, Justin is Jaden's brother. Like, it's not that Jaden is Justin's sister; he is her brother. So that's how it will be referred to from now on.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. Why is that even relevant? Like, just let the girl have her own glory. You know what I mean? Like, why does she have to be connected to her brother in any way, shape, or form?
Right. Exactly.
Which I don't know if you've seen her. Like, some of her highlights are fantastic. Like, she's just ripping the ball.
Yeah, she's really good.
She's a baller.
Yeah. No, she is for sure.
Shout out Kennesaw down the road.
Nice. I do have one more thing written down on my little notes that I keep, and it's just this: anything else? ? I don't know. I don't have anything else.
Anything else? Oh, do we need to read some reviews or anything like that? I think we forgot to do that last time.
Ooh, we do have a couple of reviews that we didn't read. Good reminder. Okay, let me find. Let's find that.
I don't think we solicited questions for this one, did we?
We didn't. But like every episode, I say that we'll read your review if we get one, and I haven't done that lately. Okay, so we do have one, and this one. So we're getting caught up here. This one's from December, from Pierce. For a review from Pierce.
It got lost in the transfer portal.
It did, yeah. Well, it's just like we said, we were on a break. So, okay, 5 stars from Pierce. Excellent podcast. It's, okay. I love both of y'all's laughs. They are hilarious. Great podcast. Always brutally honest and straightforward. So, hey, I mean, we do laugh a
thank
lot.
you.
So it's good, I guess, that our laughs are somewhat likable. Appreciated, Pierce.
Thank you, Pierce.
I think that's the only new one. Scrolling back through, I think that's the only one that we haven't read.
Man, it's almost like we need to record more. Shoot.
Well, reminder, and we just had proof, right? If you leave us a review, we will read it on the podcast eventually.
Eventually.
Thank you for reminding me. I had said that we needed to do that. Cool. Alrighty. Well, I guess we can wrap up the G-Day stuff, and I don't know. We'll see. I don't know like what kind of cadence we'll have. Like at some point, last season we were a little last minute. We had kind of like a combined season/game one preview. So we'll definitely pick back up earlier than that next year. But as we get into the summer months, I don't know. We'll see. We'll figure it out. We'll probably play it by ear, but we'll get notification out there on the socials. We're mainly on Twitter, so we'll get something out there on Twitter as we reconvene throughout the summer at whatever frequency we choose to do so. Cool. Well, I am glad that you got to go to Athens. I'm glad you got to go to G-Day, be there in person. Thanks again to friend of the show, Tim Riley, aka Miserable in Minnesota, for getting that transaction through with John.
Thank you, sir.
Cool. Alrighty. Well, we'll talk again soon, or somewhat soon. We'll figure that out. And go Dogs.
Absolutely. Go Dogs.